Okay. I decided to just make a little video to go with this blog post just because it's just easier to watch YouTube videos sometimes. Um, so if I'm in the repository here. So if I have this notebook, for instance, in this Data Explorer notebook, the idea is that basically everything in this notebook is kind of parameterized by this config JSON object, and what's going to happen is basically PaperMill will just pass in this config, pass it into a dictionary and into this config object. So what PaperMill does is literally inserts a new cell just above this one and defines this config as whatever it is you've passed in, which in this case will be a dictionary that has everything we need basically for this notebook. So this notebook is just very simple. It's got like one parameter, which is a data URL, which is the data to pull into a pandas data frame, and then just do stuff like this is just for an example, like just do some plotting and blah blah blah. Typically, like this could be much more complicated, where you're doing a certain a certain ML pipeline that has certain feature engineering steps or ETL steps or parameter optimization steps that are all kind of parameterized. So you're doing, you're using the same core of how you're doing things, but you just have different parts of it that can be parameterized, and then you can see which works best. So that's the notebook. The idea is then that basically you have this configs JSON file here, which that looks better in Visual Studio. So here it is here. So in this case, I've set up this config file for 3 kind of notebook instances, as it were. So it's going to say like there's going to be one run for the bank data, which is this UCI. I just pulled these down from the UCI. There's also like the adults, which is the census data you see everywhere, and Titanic data, the usual suspects. And the idea is that PaperMill is going to kind of loop through this JSON file and kick off 3 notebook executions in parallel. And so that's kind of done by this script here, which is this run NB batch. Basically, just using PaperMill and multiprocessing. There's this kind of run PaperMill function that we define that just takes in one of these config objects and gets what it needs from that config object. So like defines what notebook it is we want to run. So actually, some of these things aren't even used in the notebook, but they're needed by PaperMill. So like the actual notebook itself to run, like you could have different notebooks here if you really wanted it. And the output label, that's kind of relating to where it then saves the run of that notebook. So there are 2 examples of the things in the config that are actually used by the notebook but are used by PaperMill. But it doesn't really matter. So this run PaperMill function takes in the config and defines a few things, sets up a few things around kind of where to write, what outputs are actually to write to. If there's something there, back it up just in case. And then the main thing is it runs this PaperMill execute notebook command that takes these main kind of what notebook do you want, where do you want to put it, and what parameters do you want to pass in. And so in this case, we're passing in a dictionary, which is we're calling in. It's going to create an object called config, and the contents of that config are going to be one of these JSON blobs from this config.json file. There's just a few things there then around like parsing arguments and all that sort of stuff. That's for command line. If you want to just run this from command line, you can tell it what config file to use. Basically what it does is just kind of reads in the config file, loops over each configuration, and for each configuration then it kicks off a multiprocessing process to call that run, run that PaperMill function and pass in this dictionary, which is a little bit ugly here, where we have for each individual kind of configuration element we've made a new sort of dictionary. It just has the key of a config and the value of the individual config JSON that you wanted. So that's it's probably easier if I just take one off. So I'll tell it to use this config .json. So you can imagine you could have multiple configuration files that you might want to use. It should work. So there, it's kicked off. It's looping through those three, and it's just printing out each individual configuration that it's going to run for each of those three kind of notebook instances. And then we will see that as it's running these, we've done one already, it's saving the outputs then into these papermill outputs folders that's configured in that script basically as to where do you want to save it. So it's saving into a subfolder that's the same as the notebook name. And in this case, the actual output label is what I've called each of the data sets. And you can see they're all done there now. So if I look in here, then you can see your actual, there was one there previously, so I backed up this one, and this one just did a few seconds ago was the latest version of the adult one. So like you can see, you can go in and see actually what Papermill has done is it sticks in this first cell that defines the config as what was read in from the file, and then the rest of the notebook just kind of flows as normal. So it's pretty handy because you can once you kind of think of your notebooks as more like templates, then you can kick off 20 of these in parallel and go away and come back. And where it's really useful is if you're using something, these notebooks themselves can be then logged into something like MLflow. They can be logged into something like MLflow, so you have all your experiments then in the MLflow tracking server or something like that, where so you can go in there then and actually kind of analyze all the outputs and the metrics as to like which pipeline works better and all that good stuff. So yeah, that's pretty much it.